What's good, fam? That's me using Ebonics. Hello, everybody. My presentation will be on Ebonics, how it's developed and how it's used today.
Okay, so on with it. Ebonics is mostly referred to as Black English because it is predominantly used by Black people in the Black community. So, what is Ebonics? Ebonics. It literally translates into the definition of Black sounds and the combination of ebony, which means black, and phonics, which of course means sounds. So Ebonics is a form of English, but it is a dialect used among Black people to communicate with each other. And oftentimes, this is a determining factor of a Black person's intelligence because when other races hear Black people use Ebonics, they make the assumption that they are uneducated, they're not very intelligent because they refrain from using proper English and the regular speaking norms. So, how did Ebonics develop? Here is a map of West Africa, and these places here highlighted are the places in Africa, West Africa, that where Ebonics is believed to have derived from. So the acronym WAPE stands for West African Pidgin English, and it is a lingua franca in West Africa. And this is where we have the development of Ebonics. And the history here is that most of the slaves, of course, were stripped from their homelands, and they used their own form of English, which is kind of like an outdated residue of English, to be able to communicate with each other for the sake of survival, and also to be able to understand and communicate somewhat with their slave owners because they were deprived from a formal education, so they had to make do of what language that they could to be able to communicate. And one of the most influences of all of the West African languages is Kamtok, and it is believed to have the most influence on Ebonics out of all of the varieties of the West African languages. So Ebonics and entertainment. Most comedians, song artists, actors, and actresses, they use Ebonics in their movies, their song lyrics, especially hip hop, to appeal more to a Black audience. So this is an issue because most of the youth look up to celebrities and stars, and they believe that these stars have gotten where they are by using the language that they use. So they begin to adopt the same speaking style, and this is an issue in the schools because students are not performing well on standardized tests. Black students, may I add, they are not performing well on writing assignments, and they are not using formal or standard English in the classrooms. So, Ebonics, education, and the workplace. Many schools have pushed the issue for Ebonics to be taught as a separate language. But other schools have argued that Black students need more focus on technology, research, math, and science skills to keep up with the time and generation. Many people don't believe that Ebonics should be a central focus in the school because it is more of a cultural issue instead of an educational issue. Therefore, they do not believe that Ebonics is really an official language. They believe it's slang, but is not. It's just a form of English, just like any other language that has some slang in it. Most of the words are pronounced differently from those that are of standard English, but it is not slang altogether. So here is an image here. There's a teacher, African American teacher, standing in front of the classrooms. I Be Your Teacher for Today is on the board. And this here really just pokes at the idea that Ebonics should be, a central focus in the classroom so that Black students are able to perform better by communicating in a familiar way with their educators, and so that their educators could be able to communicate with them, and so that other students are exposed to this form of language so that they're also able to communicate with their African American classmates. Here is another image that kind of pokes at the idea of Ebonics use in the workplace. Oftentimes when African Americans enter a professional setting and they are not speaking formal English and instead using Ebonics, they are denied the opportunities of employment or being able to, or seen as unqualified because they're not speaking proper English. So you see here it says, yeah, I'm excited for this job. You dig it? And the interviewer is saying, sorry, you're not what we're looking for because they are not speaking properly. So Ebonics and social media, of course, these days social media is almost used to justify everything. And of course, people judge you by the pictures that you post. And of course, they're looking at the language that you use when you're using your captions to, post any type of picture or to narrate any type of thing that you are posting. So the usage of Ebonics on social media is also an indicator of a certain level of a person's intelligence. And many people observe the spelling and the grammar used by most people in the Black community on their posts, which it definitely gives a negative impression of their speaking and communication skills because they're, misspelling words on purpose because they're trying to mock exactly how they actually talk. And here are some examples of how some of these words translate from standard English into forms of Ebonics. As becomes ax, mouth, the th there at the end of mouth turns into an f and it's pronounced mouth. No becomes null. Back becomes bike. And instead of saying I am such and such, most of the time when people use Ebonics, they say I be. And again, this is a negative image for the Black community because people perceive them as poor communicators who are unable to speak properly.